Hola a todos. Hello everybody. Vamos a empezar con una pequeña introducción a justicia del lenguaje. We're going to start with a small introduction to language justice. Vamos a esperar a que todos se sienten. We'll wait until everybody's seated and comfortable. Hola a todos, me llamo Lala y junto con Verónica estamos apoyando esta reunión con interpretación simultánea. So hello everybody, I'm Lala and together with Verónica we will be supporting this meeting with simultaneous interpretation. Los organizadores de este evento se han comprometido a la justicia del lenguaje y esta reunión será interpretada del inglés al español al inglés. So the organizers of this event are committed to language justice. So this meeting will be interpreted from Spanish to English and English to Spanish. Les invitamos a todos que si no hablan el español y el inglés, pueden tener equipo en la parte de atrás. So we're inviting everybody who doesn't fully speak English and Spanish that you can get equipment in the back. No es obligatorio, it's not obligatory, pero lo que hace es que si alguien entra y habla español y quieren hacer una pregunta, ustedes pueden entender. So, what this does is if somebody comes in and speaks Spanish and they ask a question, you'll all be able to understand what they're asking. So, si tienen alguna dificultad con la interpretación o no entendiendo algo, nos pueden preguntar. If you have any difficulties with the interpretation, please reach out to one of us and we can help you. Bueno, un poquito más. A little bit more. Crear espacios multilingües es un esfuerzo colectivo. So to create these multilingual spaces is a collective effort. Algunas maneras en las que nos pueden ayudar es, so some of the ways in which you can help us is, cuando veamos las personas hablando y nos vean hacer esta señal, les estamos pidiendo que hable más despacio. So when we have the speakers or any of you speaking and you see us make this sign, it means we want you to talk a little bit slower. Ahora, si nos ven hacer esta señal, es porque puede que estén hablando muy pasito y queremos más duro. So if you see us making this sign, you also can support us. It means we need people to speak louder. The interpreter can only interpret one voice at a time. El intérprete solo puede interpretar una voz a la misma vez. Entonces, si nos ves haciendo esto, es una persona en el micrófono. So if you see us doing this, is one mic. Y lo otro, si necesitamos una pausa para clarificar. And the last is if we need you to pause to clarify something. Okay. So finalmente, los escuchantes en el canal de español, de pronto van a escuchar que usamos la E cuando terminamos palabras. Esto no es un error. Lo hacemos para una decisión deliberada para resistir el binario de género y reconocer la expansividad de géneros en nuestra comunidad. Lastly, if you speak Spanish, you might hear that we use the E in the ending of words. This is not a mistake in pronunciation. We do this as a purposeful choice to resist gender binary built in gender inclusivity. Cualquier problema, por favor, nos preguntan. If you have any issues, please ask us any questions. Lo otro es que vamos a estar grabando. The other part is we're going to be recording un canal en inglés, one channel in English, y otro canal en español, and another channel in Spanish. So, cuando hablen, recuerden respirar para que todos podamos entender. So, because we're going to be recording, just remember to breathe so we all can hear each other. Gracias. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We will start the meeting now. Just to make sure you're in the right place, this is the public information session and workshop for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative in Peekskill, New York. I have written down 5 things to remember to say. First is my name. I'm Peter Irwin. I'm a city planner with the city of Peekskill. I've been working here about a year, and my job is to manage the downtown revitalization initiatives for the city. There are a few. Tonight we will be talking about a project to improve connections for pedestrians and cyclists between our downtown and the waterfront district, and also to improve what we all know as the civic hub or gazebo or downtown area at the intersection of Division Street and Central. I will in a moment introduce our consultants and presenters tonight. First, just want to say a bit more about how to be involved, how to stay in the loop, how you can contact us. Please feel free to introduce yourself to me tonight. I have business cards in the front. You are welcome to sign in. There's sign-in sheets everywhere. It would be helpful for us to understand who comes to meetings like this and how we can do outreach more effectively. There's a planning website and a downtown revitalization initiative website at cityofpeekskill.com. And you can access that on the QR codes on the table. I have more up here. You can find my contact information on those sites, so please be in touch. Number 3 is vision. So the designers and I thought a lot about what this project meant and what kinds of mission statements could inform our work. It's on the screen in front of you, although I know that's difficult to read, so it's also on your tables. Peekskill is a friendly, intergenerational, and diverse river town. The Civic Hub and the Connectivity DRI projects will leverage Peekskill's lively arts, entertainment, and dining scene, river views, unique natural features, and access to outdoor recreation. And public space design should encourage people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds to live, visit, learn, work, and raise a family in Peekskill. What it means to me is, like all of these river towns, we have this big river bank, and that's Central Avenue here, and we want to turn that into a place where everyone in our community can live on a daily basis. So we're going to make Central Avenue really nice, we're going to make our downtown really nice, and we want to hear from all of you about that. Why are you here? First and foremost, to be informed. Secondly, to give all of the feedback that you can tonight. So we'll pause a couple times during the presentation for questions. Would ask that everyone is respectful during the Q&A sessions. We have mics to pass around, so you'll have an opportunity to speak. And like I said, if you don't get all your thoughts out tonight, come pester me at City Hall and find my contact information through the cards around tonight. How do I? It's over here. Oh. I'm just going to introduce the team and then let our presenters take over. And before I do, just to say a little bit about next steps. So here we are at the end of March, using the feedback we gained tonight and also from discussions with the Common Council. The engineers will come up with a final proposal for both of these 2 projects, and we will work toward bidding that out for construction later in the year. And we hope that construction will occur early in 2024. So the team, and I want to especially thank our project advisory committee made up of many of you. Connor Green from Peekskill Walks, Joseph Thompson from Joseph Thompson Architects, LaFern Joseph from the Fern Tree, Cynthia Del Rosario from the Peekskill Business Improvement District, Eddie Giracocha from the Copy Center downtown, Amy Wiggins from the Conservation Advisory Council, and John Nearing, a former Parks Advisory Board member and representative of the Peekskill School District. Presenting tonight from the firm Barton and LaJudas, which was contracted by the city to do this work, we have Dan Rourke, Lee Jones, and Nicole Cleary. So I'd like to invite Lee up and to start the presentation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Peter. As Peter mentioned, my name is Lee Jones. I'm a landscape architect with Barton and LaJudas, and my business card, Dan's business card, and Nicole's are also on the table over there along with Peter's. And just a little further understanding of how tonight is going to unfold. We're going to sort of walk you through how we got to today, where we're going moving forward, and we're going to break this project up into the connectivity corridor and the Civic Hub, and we're going to talk about the connectivity corridor first, and then we'll take a pause and do some Q&A of how we're going to get from the train station up to the Gazebo Plaza, and we'll really look at that corridor on Railroad Ave to Hudson Ave to South Water Street and up Central Ave. Then we will take a break and again open it up to comments and questions. And then from there we will focus on the Civic Hub, which is that intersection, as Peter was mentioning, at Central and Division. And then at the end, I noticed a lot of you at the beginning of the night We're already looking at the printouts over there, which the majority of those are slides within this presentation. So thank you for already sort of getting a jump on what we're going to show you tonight. And at the end, we'll allow you to all get back up. And on the back table, we have Sharpie markers, Post-it notes, pens, and red dots and blue and green dots for you to basically mark those up as you see, using red dots to put on places where you think there might be a conflict that we haven't addressed, putting green or blue dots on areas where you think it's a great solution, or you really like what you're seeing. Everything from the maps of what our current conceptual design is, along with the precedent images that sort of give you images of what this could look like. And again, there are Sharpies back there. We welcome you to draw right on top of it or write comments. If you're hesitant about that, there's also Post-it notes and pens, and you can write your comment on the Post-it note and then stick it up on the drawings. And we'll also then be breaking out that you can come up to Dan, Nicole, or myself and Peter and ask questions that way as well in smaller groups. So again, how we got here today, as Peter mentioned, this is 2 projects that came out of the city's DRI initiative. And that was in August of 2019 when the city of Peekskill was awarded $10 million. And in November of 2020 is when they defined the DRI projects and what we're going to come out of, what projects were going to be executed within the city. And this being 2 of the projects. In September, these 2 projects were awarded to B&L, Barton and LaJudas, and then we've been working with the city closely ever since. We started again with a site walkthrough with the city back in September of 2022. And then we've also had a surveyor come and survey key areas along our project corridor and our project areas, allowing us to bring the conceptual design that we are looking at today. In this time, we've also met with our project advisory committee twice and presented this to the City Common Council. So the drawings that you're going to see tonight, again, we met with their PAC meeting for the 2nd time at the end of February and the Common Council earlier this month. And obviously now we're meeting with you today, and we're going to take all of your comments and further these drawings into the final 95% design plans. And again, we're meeting with Peter and the city weekly, so all of these conversations and designs, they're still a work in progress. But they are, again, looking through all the different opportunities and constraints throughout this corridor. So understanding what our project limits are, again, this is 2 of the DRI projects. The blue aqua color is the connectivity project, again, taking us from the train station up to downtown. And the pink areas are the civic hub, the public spaces that we are looking at. Another DRI initiative is incorporating public art throughout the city. While this is not one of our current projects, in the way that we are working side by side with the city, we're ensuring that any of the overlapping projects are all going to be coordinated. So this map just shows where 5 of the public art installations are going to go all along the connectivity corridor. Throughout tonight, we're going to be using a lot of terms for allowing active transportation and multimodal transportation throughout the city. So just to get us all on the same page, a cycle track is a 2-way bike lane. So bike lanes that you might be familiar with are, a bike lane traveling in the same direction as the cars and a bike lane in the opposite direction. But a cycle track has the 2-way bikes going on one side of the street, both directions on one side of the street, and they are separated from the vehicular traffic by a buffer. A shared use path is where bicyclists, people walking and people biking are sharing the pathway, and these are in situations where there's not enough room on the roadway to add bike lanes or a cycle track, but there is enough space on the sidewalk area to allow bicyclists and people walking to share the space. A sharrow is a marking on the pavement, which is another case where there's not enough space to have a designated bike lane or a cycle track, but it's allowing vehicles traveling in the space to understand that bikes are sharing the roadway with them. Bollards are vertical separation pieces that can be used. They're obviously at the end of North Division for when they close it off for Restaurant Row. The bollards are on either side to prevent vehicular traffic from entering that space. A curb bump out is at the intersections, and the goal here is to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians. So at certain intersections where it's applicable, we will try to do that again to make the space safer for pedestrians and allow the conflict areas of overlapping uses to be as short as possible. A raised intersection on the upper right is where the whole street bed comes up to the level of the sidewalk. Again, that's allowing that circulation through a given intersection to be more focused on the pedestrian as opposed to the vehicles. But vehicles are obviously still using that intersection, and the raisedness allows them to slow down. A similar but different application is a raised crosswalk. So the whole intersection is not raised, but just the crosswalk is, again, at the sidewalk level, allowing the pedestrian to not have to go down and then back up. So this is an overall map of our project area, and our presentation tonight is going to walk you from the train station down at the A rectangle up to the intersection of Central Ave and Division at the H area. And I'm going to hand it over to Dan now to start taking us up the corridor. Oops. Oh, sorry.
All right. Good evening. Again, I'm Dan Rourke with Barton and LaJudas. So first here is the connectivity project. So the goal here is to connect the train station to downtown, provide a facility for bicyclists to use, a dedicated facility. So Lee just mentioned cycle track, bike lanes, all these different things. The optimum facility for cyclists is a cycle track. So we were tasked with creating a cycle track from the bottom at the train station, the bottom of the hill, all the way up to downtown. So starting here at Railroad Avenue section, this is the design that we've developed with the city. So the cycle track is the green area. Green is kind of like the color we've used for bicyclists before. So the green area is depicting where the cycle track would be constructed. So kind of rearranging how the road looks now. Recently the road was already converted to one way, so there's some extra pavement space available. And kind of rearranging the parking patterns, we're able to fit this cycle track in on Railroad Avenue, get it right up to the train station. And what we plan on doing at the train station area is providing some bike parking, some benches, like other amenities that you would normally see like at a trailhead type scenario where a bicycle facility would start or end. And also a key highlight here, couple of highlights, maintaining the outdoor dining that's been developed since COVID, but kind of more formalizing it rather than the temporary concrete barriers that are out there now. We have that dark red area, kind of formalizing that, making it look like it's an actual space that would be permanent. And we're also creating, kind of redesigning that intersection, shortening up the crosswalks for pedestrians. Pedestrian crosswalks are the white crossing, and creating a cyclist crossing, which is the green area to get across Hudson. I will note there will be some changes to this intersection. MTA, the railroad company, they have their own project to fix the pedestrian crossing of the train tracks there. So we are working with them, and there'll be some slight variations to make sure both projects kind of tie in together nicely. So just moving up the corridor here, as we cross Hudson, in front of the Standard House and heading towards South Water Street. We're showing a tan color. This is called the shared use path, just because of restrictions in width in front of the building. There is not enough room for a sidewalk, a pedestrian area, and a cycle track. So a shared use path is a 10-foot area that can be shared by bicyclists and pedestrians, but it's still separated from vehicle traffic. And as we wrap around the corner, Hudson over to South Water Street, we pick up the cycle track again in front of the parking lot. In order to make this cycle track, we're showing rearranging how the parking lot currently exists. Currently, right now, it's like 2 parking lots, so we're consolidating it into 1 parking lot, and then reimagining that space with, this curb layout, new driveway entrances, and in order to provide a planter strip for trees and the room for the cycle track on the west side of the road. And then as you approach the brewery here, another cyclist and pedestrian crossing of Hudson, or of Water Street. And on my next slide, so after we make that crossing, continue down Water Street as we approach Central Ave. So same idea here as on the previous slide, kind of fixing the curb line. Like right now, these spaces are right up on the road and people are just pulling out onto the road. There's no real parking bumpers or curb or anything, it's not ideal to have pedestrians there or cyclists. So formalizing that parking a little bit better and creating that barrier with curb, the cycle track area, forcing people to actually back out of the space and use the driveway entrances as everyone really expects a car to do. And also that provides us that space so we can get that dedicated bicycle facility here. I'd also like to point out this intersection of South Water Street. Right now, that pavement is so wide, and that angle here, it's just an opportunity for people to speed through there. It's just a very wide open space. And once you're here and you're looking that way, you can see from one end to the other. It's just like very inviting for someone to speed. So we're trying to tighten this up, create this curb bump out here, forcing drivers to pull up and kind of make a right angle, force them to stop, and then you have to actually take a 90-degree turn. And same with over here, we're bumping out this area so people can't have that straight shot. You have to kind of snake around. It's just subtle ways to force people to slow down and make sure your eyes are paying attention to what's happening around you. And we will move over to Central Avenue. So at Central Avenue, we have the cycle track on the south side of the road. And in order to do this, we're staying within the existing pavement limits. So no actual road work here. It's just reallocating the space that's available. So shifting the travel lanes over, kind of defining them with the yellow center line. So fit the cars where they need to be. On-street parking would be available down at the bottom of the hill here. And, the south side was chosen because there's less conflict points, less driveway crossings than the north side. And let me see if I can go. Just going up the hill, the same idea, the same theme, just reallocating the space, moving cars to the north, cyclists to the south, and a cross-section view of what that would look like, elevation view if you were standing on the road. So this is what we have now, kind of wider travel lanes, parallel parking, and once you get up the hill, as you start to make that turn, the road narrows, so there would be 2 travel lanes here, no parking lane, and the cycle track. So this is ultimately what it would look like when the project is complete. Oops, sorry. And again, going up, Here's Washington Street intersection, which is kind of an interesting intersection in itself. So we've tried to clean it up as best we can as far as the project objective for here goes. And, you know, making it very apparent with this green dash striping that there's other people using this space rather than just cars. So we have Sharrows on Washington Street. We're shortening up this crossing, getting rid of that little triangle island that's in there, extending the curb out, and you know, formalizing these crosswalks for pedestrians just to try and help make everyone pay attention when you're driving that there's other things happening here and we have other facilities for other users now. And as we approach the end of this project corridor, where Central Ave meets North Division, South Division Street. So we cross Union Ave here. So we're fixing up the crosswalks again for pedestrians and the cyclist crossing here. Couple driveway crossings as we approach the end. And again, we're changing how the space looks now, allowing parking on the north side, using the south side for the cycle track. And ultimately, as we get up to the intersection, we're crossing, and this is kind of the termination point for the connectivity project, which is where the Civic Hub project picks up next. Okay.
I think we're going to pause here for some questions in a second before the presenters go on to the Civic Hub area. I wrote down a list of things and I forgot like 3 of them, so I just wanted to mention a couple points that I saw in that presentation. Everybody knows the parking, the lot under Route 9. I've heard it called a mud pit. It's controlled by the Department of Transportation. Our presentation showed that as a parking scheme because there obviously is an opportunity there. It's not strictly part of this project, and it's expensive. But we did want everybody to be aware of that opportunity, and something I will continue to work on. On the previous slide, we do have state grant funding to improve the crosswalk. So at Union and Central on the image shown, we hope to make it a high visibility stamped concrete red crosswalk like others downtown, and that's something we can continue to build out. And then the most important thing is budget. We have a limited budget, and I will work hard to get more money, but at the end of the day, we won't necessarily have enough grant funding to do everything that you will see tonight. So part of the reason that you're here, and we're hopeful for your feedback, is to understand what the priorities are from the community so we can make some difficult decisions. Thanks.
Do we want to take questions on that?
And I think we could stop here for some questions, so maybe turn the lights on for a second.
All the way in the back, Kathy.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Corey.
Okay, quick question. No, I love this project. I'm really looking forward to full bike lanes. The question is that Peter's basically one of his last comments, that there's not enough money basically. What are your proposed cuts or minimizing or whatever to make it fit the budget?
So what the question was what are we thinking of for proposed cuts to reduce the budget to fit what the project funding has available? Okay. So do you want me to get that? Or, there you go. No, I was repeating it for the interpreters. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So we're here to get feedback on what everybody here in the community likes. So there is no preconceived, we're going to get rid of this object or this scenario here. Kind of want to take the feedback in today and work with the city on what's feasible for them to maintain and keep going in the future. But so there's nothing planned at the moment. Go ahead.
One thing I just wanted to point out is looking at this slide of, we talked about curb bump outs, and at our intersection of South Water and Central, on one side, we showed a curb bump out. Oh, am I losing the battery? A curb bump out here, but on the other side, you can see we're not adjusting the curb line, but we're pinching the vehicular area with a painted no driving area. So that's some of the ways that we can do it if, doing new curbs in areas is not possible. Or is there options to just, do painted areas or things like that? That's just one thing. And again, even with that, it doesn't mean we're going to be able to handle everything. And I think phasing will be very key. And to Dan's point of listening to you of what your priorities are will help us understand and work out that phasing with the city.
I'm curious about, so going up Central Avenue, you show the lane on the south side of the street. Do you know approximately how many parking spaces are being lost? Because there are a couple development sites that are on that side of the street, so I'm curious what happens if those sites eventually get developed and you have the bike path running there. I happen to be on the planning board, so that's why I'm thinking that. So so I was curious if there was if you counted how many spaces we might be losing or not, or gaining.
Yep. So on-street parking for Central, currently there's 40 spaces, and with these proposed changes, there would be 17. 17 remaining, so 23 lost. Yep.
We got Tim next, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. This is very exciting. Thank you so much. I think this is going to make the city greater. I just had a question about the area closer to the train station. It seems like you're putting the bike lane right on top of the sidewalk. And I just want to make sure the sidewalk remains and is prioritized. And maybe in that street that is less busy and only for drop-off and pickup of trains, that the bike lane could actually be incorporated into the street rather than the sidewalk. And just like that little connection, I just think there's a lot of pedestrians there, so I don't want to take away space from them.
Yeah, we're not intending to take pedestrian space away. The cycle track is on the roadway piece here. So it's just a.
So I think you're just seeing the trees over the sidewalk, but it is, yeah.
So the sidewalk is actually back behind it.
It is. It's just a tricky image beneath the rendering.
Okay, so the only kind of moment of combination is in front of the standard house.
Yes.
Okay.
I think let's get a couple more and then keep them moving.
All right, just looking at this picture, I have a safety concern with this intersection. As people, and I go walk at the river, if the train tracks, if the signal is down, people will stop, but they will cut around, crossing the double yellow to make that left towards the train station. You mentioned MTA is looking to do something. Is there anything that's going to prevent that? Because I'm just waiting for an accident to happen as cars are stopped to go onto the Riverfront Green. Cars trying to get to the train station are going to cross the double yellow there and hook that left. Yes. Right.
Yeah. Do you want me to? Do you want to?
The Metro North Railroad got a $2.5 million grant to make safety improvements there, so we're sure that we're going to do something that mitigates that problem. It's not shown on this slide. They've have presented to the council. They got some feedback. I'm trying to channel that feedback, make sure it works with this project. But by the next time we present to the council, we'll show that, and it'll be a lot better.
Okay. One other question with the loss of the parking spots.
Cheated.
How much annual revenue will the city lose from those spots no longer being metered?
Well, that's a good question, and we can model that. I mean, we know the current demand, so it's pretty low, especially along Central Avenue. So Central Avenue does have metered spaces at the bottom of the hill. It's very small print, but I'll make this presentation available. Every slide has parking counts in the current and as-built scenarios, so we can use that information tomorrow. That's a good question, thanks.
Okay, and just one last one, since I have the mic. No, one more. For the bike lanes, does DPW have the ability to plow those bike lanes? Do they have the equipment to do it?
It'll have to be maintained, yes. I don't know what the current equipment situation is, but
They have the equipment to plow. It is extra work, so we have to get that feedback from DPW.
I'm done, Peter, thank you.
I think we'll make this the last question just so we can make sure to get through the whole presentation. We got tons more at the end. Well, I was going to pass the mic here. Was that someone else?
So this one's related to the last two questions. For anyone who who drives to the train station during rush hour, these days it's very congested when the train arrives. So I'm curious if any impact studies have been done on what the narrowing. I see Railroad Avenue is still one way. At some point in time, it was a two-way, so you could exit up Central. That's not the case anymore. And then I'm also concerned on Central. You've got Danes, you've got the masonry business. I routinely see very large trucks there dropping off, picking up. They have to take these wide turns in and out of the businesses. So again, the narrowing of the road, if there is narrowing, have any impact assessment been done on the flow of traffic, the safety concerns when these large vehicles are trying to get in and out of these businesses?
yeah. Yes, we looked at the width of the road. So there's standard widths for each type of roadway. So Central Ave is classified as a certain type of road. So the travel lanes are accommodating all the traffic that's on that road. Yes, there's some larger vehicles that use the road that have to go to those commercial businesses, and they will still be able to access each driveway as they do now. They just will have to work their turns a little bit differently. Instead of swinging out wide, they'll have to make some longer turns in. But
So we'll take more questions at the end, but I want to make sure we get through the rest of the presentation. So I think Nicole will take from here.
Yes. All right, so I will walk you all through two different alternatives for the Civic Hub area. I'm going to start at the top left or northwest quadrant and kind of work my way counterclockwise as I talk through some of the improvements. All right, so alternative one here that you're looking at on the screen, we'll start at the K lot there. So we are taking a look at some of the existing city parking lots to see if we can maximize parking for some of the parking spaces that might be striped or not utilized right now. So taking a look at that parking lot, we were able to add a few more spaces in there just as a concept. As Dan had mentioned, the cycle track ends kind of at the end of Central where it comes into North and South Division Street. So you'll see that crosswalk across Central Ave for bicyclists. That's kind of the terminus of the cycle track for this project. So in Lot K, we have two rectangles that you can see here in the parking lot, just concepts for some possible bike storage facilities. So if people come to this space, they can safely lock up their bikes, backpacks, or anything in those bike lockers. And one thing you'll see on these slides too, we have some image examples of what those items might look like. So if you make your way to the east, where the flagpole is, the flagpole would stay where it is. You don't see that on the plan, but it would stay where it is. We're looking to connect that parking lot a little bit more fluently to that pedestrian space, increase some seating areas, kind of open it up for views, make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly in that plaza space. If we flip across North Division Street, kind of where the existing gazebo is now, looking to open up that space in this concept. This area here would all be at the same elevation, so kind of one smooth grade through there. There are a series of steps that would make up that grade change. As you know now, there's some different elevations in that plaza currently. And then we would be looking to keep this ramp along that building just for access purposes. We're also looking to show some overhead shade structures, so you're still getting some shade in that plaza. They're a little bit smaller than kind of that large gazebo you have out there now. You can see them, these brown rectangular items, also down here in this image photo. So a little bit smaller scale, still going to provide some shade, but they're not going to detract from the existing building architecture that's out there. We're also looking at some various seating options through benches, seat walls, and also an option to kind of sit on some of these stepped spaces. If we go over to the intersection now, you'll see this intersection is painted. Just an idea to kind of liven up the intersection a bit. In this alternative, the whole intersection is raised. So how Lee was mentioning earlier, it's at the same elevation as the pedestrian spaces outside of the traffic area. Again, it kind of just elevates the pedestrian, gets them a little bit more in the view of vehicles. It also helps for events when the movable truck stage is out here, provides more pedestrian space for those events. And then a similar character you can see kind of carries down South Division Street with improved seating. We're also including some additional shade trees and native planting spaces. We're trying to keep as many existing trees that are out there now. The ones that are in good health would be tried to be maintained, and then add some additional shade trees. And then you can see in some of these images, which you might be able to see better after the meeting, of kind of what these pocket park spaces might look like. Also with this concept on South Division Street, we did a traffic study, and it did show that the two northbound and southbound turning lanes were not fully necessary through here. So what we did for these concepts is show just a two-way traffic flow. But this east side here is expanded to really be this new like pedestrian plaza through here. And then this curb line on the west side would stay the same. All right, and here's a cross section of South Division Street for this first alternative. So you can see up top here, the existing sidewalk, turn lanes, travel lanes, turn lane, and then sidewalk. And if you come down right below, you see that the sidewalk is still in the same space on the west side, 2 travel lanes, both directions. And then the pedestrian plaza space really expands for kind of the businesses along this side to really embrace this outdoor public realm. And then again, another sidewalk that's wide enough for two-way traffic. And you can see some of these images of kind of what that could look like in this space. All right, and then for alternative 2, same thing. We'll start at kind of the top left here, lot K. We looked at the same pieces for maximizing those existing parking lots from the city, some bike storage facilities, and then you're going to see kind of these more organic curvilinear shapes for this alternative, which you can see in these photos again on the right, kind of a different feel that we're going for with this concept. These crosswalks in the intersections, just the crosswalks are raised, so the intersection is still at the road or vehicle level, but the crosswalks are now up 6 inches. So it's almost like a speed hump, but just for the crosswalks. And then if you come over here to this plaza, this one's broken up a little bit differently. So this level here would be up above the street 6 inches with the curb height. And then you have the step system here that would act as kind of this image here, which would be steps to walk up and down and also wide enough to sit on. So if this was kind of a lower event space, this would act as a seating option. And then this is up at the same level as that ramp along the buildings. So kind of 2 or 3 different tiers through there. And then if you come down on South Division Street, in this example, we are taking a little bit from both sides on the east and west side for the pedestrian plaza space. So you're getting that pedestrian plaza on the east side and on the west side, and you're still removing those 2 travel lanes. And then you can see this a little bit better in the cross section. So you're keeping those 2-way sidewalks on both sides wide enough for 2-way traffic. The pedestrian plaza space is coming in on both sides, and then the travel lanes are still there. And then again, some images over here of kind of some curvilinear bench options, some different shapes for the tree grades, and then kind of these native planting zones with shade trees that could be incorporated. And the thought for any plantings out there, we'd recommend native plantings that would take really well out here, larger massings for a little bit easier of maintenance, and that would also have to be something coordinated with DPW on what's maintainable. All right, and then these are just some images that you can see on the wall as well. Again, just kind of showing you some options that could be out there, what the space could feel like, with some precedent examples from all the different furnishings. This is another version. And then the final area included within this project limits are the intersection at Orchard Street near Monument Park. There's some concepts for just some improved crosswalks up here. So showed a couple options, which Dan mentioned, this white ladder painted crosswalk. Peter mentioned kind of the city standard of that concrete stamped, and then also possibility for more of an artistic crosswalk, and then just showing some of the pedestrian signal improvements as well for those two intersections. That takes us to the end of going through the concepts. So we can open it up for questions on the Civic Hub, and then I think have some general discussion after that.
For Lot K, is there any plans to close access from the parking lot just to north of it to prevent through traffic?
No, not right now. I'll come back. Wait. I'm only kidding. Go. Okay, make it quick. Make it quick. Make it a good one.
So the gazebo's going, right? Is that what you're, okay. There's also a memorial for Brown Plaza. Is that going to stay, or is that?
That will stay.
Thank you. That's it. Who's next?
I just want to say I love the idea of anything to do that can be done to calm the streets. I love the idea of the raised crosswalks. I love where, as you go past the library, just having to stop that crosswalk in the middle. Anything to slow the racing of cars through our city would be welcomed. And I think it would families with children into the downtown, because it doesn't feel safe with the cars zipping by the way they're doing now. So pocket parks, Esther Place, it's just such a nice way to calm things down in the city. So thank you for offering that.
I think I might have. Sorry, I'm not getting the order quite right, but I got one over here.
I was just wondering about the trees, because so often trees die so quickly when they're in urban settings, and we've lost so many trees in this town. So it looks like you have some pretty interesting tree protocol around planting and protecting and all of that, which is wonderful. And I just, the DEC is having like a meeting on the upcoming round of tree grants, street tree grants for urban, and we would definitely, our community would qualify, so I'm just wondering. So like from what I know, it's really great to group trees and islands, because that gives them more, maybe your tree planting technology, I don't know if there's a kind of plan that I can look at to learn more about it, but I would just love to see the trees last more than 5 years. Even if there has to be fewer of them, if we can just plan for a few that are going to make it,
Yeah.
because it'll make all the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so trees in the urban condition are obviously very hard to get them to grow. We have, in our experience, used kind of different soil medias, so giving them enough soil under the ground is really going to help them grow. One thing we show in urban conditions is the structural soil, which is a gravel soil combination, and that kind of just helps with the drainage. It lets the roots kind of grow and go where they need to go. It also helps the roots stay down so that you don't get that heaving on the surface that you sometimes get with asphalt, or if the trees areas is too small. So yes, we do have some ideas, and we have some solutions that have worked in other urban areas.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I can see that this has been a tremendous amount of work, and I'm really interested in how it's developed over time. I've been involved around this the entire time. My question has to do with it expanding in front of the old Ford Piano building up the street. What happens as you get in front of Rocco's, let's say? Because I know there's some infrastructure stuff. There's a big light pole. There's some other stuff there, and it gets very narrow. And where does it end? Does it go all the way to the corner?
Yeah, the expansion just goes kind of, I guess, past the Hudson Room. Yeah, just to the intersection. So it's just between the two intersections. Are we down further? Or are we off the page?
I'm sorry, I don't know the exact light fixture, but we will have to look at all of the existing infrastructure. There's one storm drain on the north side of that block, so we're aware of that. The big thing for us is we want to make sure to work with DPW, the police, and the fire chief to make sure emergency vehicles can navigate these curb lines, and they've been really supportive and really helpful so far, so we're optimistic about that. Let's walk and take a look. Yeah.
Thank you. So I love this first gazebo thing, but I have a question about the second version. In the second version, up where like the gazebo used to be, is there no shade in that one? Thank you. That's it. I'm just wondering if there's shade structures up in the gazebo there, because I don't think I see them, but like I don't know.
Yes, there should be shade structures. I think they're just not showing up kind of on this with the lighting and everything. But yes, the thought would be to include some smaller shade structures in both of the alternatives, just to make it a more pedestrian environment.
See a lot of hands. I'm just going to try to get people that haven't had a chance yet. Some of the hand raisers, some people know how to get a hold of me anyway, so.
Hello, I'm just wondering if either of these schemes would accommodate further expansion of the bike lane in some potential future project, because it looks like it just kind of ends there. And obviously the idea with bike lanes is like, keep adding to them.
Yeah, so this project, how it's currently funded, would end here. However, the city is looking at future grants or projects that could keep those moving.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I got one in there. Everybody's getting their first shot first. But she has asked a question tonight. I'm aware of that, yeah.
So I heard it mentioned earlier about phasing. I would imagine in each of the individual corridors, without all of the aspects, it's probably more unsafe than it currently is. So when you say phasing, does that mean the small sections that you went over in the presentation at a time and sort of have this project grow over time?
I believe the goal would be to implement most of this. It may just be different types of implementation. So like Lee was showing, some of these bump outs might be painted on the pavement for the first year or so until additional funding might be able to be raised, or the city sees how those spaces change, and if they're really successful, again, they might pursue additional funding if that's not able to be done as part of this. But I do think these spaces are meant to all be improved.
Right. I mean, as rollouts go, well, I think that it would be really great if one area could sort of receive the full fanfare, which could really show the potential for possibly expanding in the future or adding more of these features in the future. And then the other question is, my view, and I try to spend as much time as possible in all of these in this downtown areas, my view is that the illegal parking and the double parking and the triple parking is what causes the cars to navigate in unfriendly manners, which is what causes most of the unsafe conditions. How do we prevent all of this from becoming 15-minute parking?
Yeah, that'll just be an enforcement issue that has to be upheld once this project is implemented. Yep. There will be, so on Central, I guess I did not go into detail of this, but to separate the cycle track from the vehicle travel lanes, there will be vertical bollards, or there'll be posts, yeah. So, yeah, you're not going to be able to just drive over there and just park when you want to, but yeah, but it will be an enforcement issue too.
Okay. I love the Central Plaza. I just want to talk about the plaza area. I think the raised plaza, and I know that this is budget limiting, but the full raised plaza actually really makes it a space and a place. And also because that's where the central, where the I'll call it the bandstand, I don't remember what it's called. When there is events down there, I think the raised walks, well, I love them because I want them everywhere, but they may actually be a little bit of I'm not going to say a tripping hazard because you do go up and over, but when there's a big event like that happening there, that's I mean, it should work. But the other part is I much prefer the on part of South Division that's in front of what is going to be the new Arts Center, which is now Ford Piano, because that actually creates another space, another place, rather than just a wide sidewalk, two wide sidewalks. The idea of what's wonderful about having places in the city, if you think of the city as a house, the house has, where do you spend your time? You spend it in the living room or the rooms of the house, not the hallways. The hallways are not so important. And if we, I think, by just making wide sidewalks and not making it a place, then you're actually just making it another hallway. And we have plenty of hallways here in Peekskill. We need the spaces because it also then becomes, we need the rooms, we need the places to be. Because what this does is also then you get a whole series, the whole downtown becomes a series of places, from Esther Place now to the one in front of the, what's now Ford Piano, to where the old gazebo was, that central point. You move over towards the renovation that's going to be at Pugsley Park. It just really strings the whole center of the city together. The other thing I want to respond to was the parking on Central. I'm part of Safe Routes Peekskill, which is about getting kids safely to school on walking and bicycling. And we had a meeting with some of the police, and we spoke with Officer Carter, who patrols Central Avenue. He rarely sees cars parked on Central Avenue. He said it's never a parking problem there. So I think taking away a few parking spaces for buildings that are going to be building new, and we are going to have new buildings. There's a new building, the old Zeff's, that then became the bakery. That building is empty now. The parking in front of that will be gone. But that building is owned by the people that are building the whole big residential parking and all that garage behind there. I think it would really be on the owner of the building to provide parking, not the public.
Quick question on the Monument Park piece, which is kind of sort of isolated from this. We need pedestrian upgrades over there for sure, and the separate DRI project is making that space nicer, but that feels like sort of just basic pedestrian infrastructure that shouldn't be part of a grant project. How much is that piece of it?
In terms of a dollar amount, I don't have a dollar amount tonight. These intersections were listed in the strategic plan, and at this phase where we are, we want to be, we want to honor every part of that plan. And I do think it's important that one way or another we make sure that throughout the DRI area, there are safe crosswalks with signals. I agree that if we could find another source and do this sooner, we will.
Yeah, okay, I totally agree. It needs to happen. It just feels like what you're showing is basic pedestrian stuff that we should be able to do as a city out of our budget and use the grant money for the really great stuff that's being proposed. So.
That's a good comment.
I was actually just going to add, I think you already mentioned it, Peter, but all of these signals, the lighting signals and the pedestrian signals, they need to be improved throughout the entire process. I mean, I only see it here on the Monument Park, but it should be throughout the whole entire project, because that's an issue.
Thank you for that comment, and we have walked the site, and we will make sure that those signals, where I live, there's I can't cross the street from my apartment without going through somewhere where there's not a signal, and I think I'm going to get hit. I want to pass it to, sorry, Jeff, but, okay, go ahead. Yeah,
quick comment.
Yeah.
So on the gazebo one, I was curious why you didn't consider perhaps a sort of a tent-like covering for the whole plaza that could be nice and colorful and really focus that as a gathering spot. That was one idea. Somebody else's comment about how do we get trees. There is a tree ordinance that was passed in Peekskill, and people who are supposed to pay into it, I don't know that it's being enforced, but money is supposed to go to planting street trees throughout the city when it gets raised from that, so that could be a potential source. And also one last thing, and have you considered electric bikes are getting more popular and scooters as well, and so you were showing these bike storage areas. Have you considered installing a charging station for scooters and electric bikes?
That could be like an add-on or something too, yeah.
So they have looked at electric bikes and working with, so as the president of the bid, we work with the city manager. And so there are some initiatives to look at, e-bikes and bringing them in and having a separate company manage that. And then in terms of the tree ordinance, even when the other city manager was here, Andy, that was a big initiative for him. So trees in the city has always been a focus.
No, I know
they just no, but it is.
That's I'm on the show.
And I just would thank Cynthia too. In the bid, we walked through the area and we are aware of where we want to bring power to downtown. Also, we know that's important for people, so it's a good comment. Sorry, I just wanted to hear.
Thank you. Specifically the bike lane, how much of it is protected bike lane and how much of it is exposed to illegal double parking?
The whole cycle track that we're showing is protected. Yeah, in some manner, whether it's raised behind a curb, if it's on the same surface as the road, there'll be some vertical delineation.
Thank you. I noticed that the improvements are going by sites where there potentially is going to be new private development. And I'm wondering if there's any strategy for how those developers are going to be approached to maybe make improvements, and what kind of improvements could those private developers make that would really build and enhance the overall concept that's being contemplated?
I think that if they're already, the ones that are already being built, they've already been through the city's planning board, so I think it's past the point of what the developer could do for those projects. Projects that are prior to planning board approval, that's up to the city's planning board on what the improvements would be needed.
I do think part of creating these spaces and bringing in some new materials and furnishings would be creating this new palette of materials for the city, and that might be something that the developers could pick up on, like a similar character and furnishing that they could carry with their improvements as well.
Well, I wanted to just mention that whatever we can do to remember that we're an environmental community, we're on the river, and to protect the city for the upcoming generation. I spend a lot of time talking with young adults in their mid-20s, and I can tell you that this is like a train wreck for them. So anything we can do to make cities greener and safer will calm our younger citizens and maybe give them hope that actually something is going to be done to address climate change, that our cities will be greener and cooler and really walkable, because I love walking around Peekskill. I live in an area of Peekskill that I can walk to many places, but I can tell you that, you know, in the summer the streets are baking. It is hot, it is hard to walk. And I think that just the more green canopies we can have, the slower the traffic. You know, nobody wants to walk with like taking your, you know, like wondering if you're going to end up in the ER. The streets are really fast, so I really want to again address anything you can do. The raised crosswalks to keep our children and our, you know, all of us safer, because any one of us can get mowed down by a car at any time. And the more green we can do. And so I'll wind us up with, I love the bike lanes. You know, my family is all over in Europe, and my aunts were biking into their 80s. It's part of the culture in Europe. You know, it would be great to like increase bikeability here and walkability so that we can have the next generation be a healthier generation. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, my question is about the bike lane going up Central. First of all, as a cyclist, this is really wonderful to see, and I think it's great work from all of you. But that intersection, Central and Washington, somebody called it interesting. I think the way it works right now is that there's a light, there's a separate left turn lane for cars that I don't really see here. And so there's a different cycle for if you want to turn onto Washington versus if you want to keep on going on Central. I'm wondering, I don't particularly care about the cars, but in terms of like being on a bike crossing that intersection, how will that work to ensure that those two phases are split in time?
Yeah, as far as the bike crossing against traffic, yeah, in that zone, the bicyclists would have to yield to the vehicles in order to cross in this particular scenario here.
Let's keep taking questions, but I do also want to encourage people to check out the designs up close. If you have, any input you want to leave behind, that would be great. Dwight?
Thanks, Peter. I think it would be worth studying ending the bike lanes when it approaches the railroad station shorter than where you brought them. As the people come off the trains, it's like a horde of people at one point coming across. So I think it'd be worth studying stopping it before you get to the train station to avoid any conflict with the rush of people coming off the train.
Yeah, it's a good point. One of the ideas is to end it in this area. There's a little more space there, and that's if we can provide some sort of parking area for bikes here and connecting pedestrians formally up that way. But yeah, that is something that's been put into play.
Oh, sorry.
While you have this up, does the reconfigured parking lot behind the Standard House close the second access point at the Yellow Brick Road? My office is actually above there, and I also know that Stephen, for the wine cellar, there's trucks that come in and will back in there, and it looked like that parking lot takes away the ability for us to drive through the Yellow Brick Road in and then out again. Right at the top of the Yellow Brick Road behind the Standard House, now there's an exit point that lets you go back into that parking lot. There's no spaces in that corner, and if you close that off, you effectively cut off his parking behind the building and his ability to receive anything, plus the tenants that use the spaces currently on the Yellow Brick Road would have their parking cut in half because we can't turn around.
Okay. Yep. Okay. We'll look into that one. That's for sure. Yeah. You got that right.
For the businesses on the left and right of the hub, if you expand it out, are those businesses now responsible for snow removal up to the street?
I think that's a fair question. Part of this process is making sure that we're working with all of the business owners that front on our project area. So that includes the Gateway Chamber, that includes that Standard House, all the business on Central, and you know, we're going to have to come to the table and find a compromise.
Right.
Probably. I actually personally don't know all of the regulations about street cleaning, so I'll have to look into that.
Then the other concern, and I like the idea of having additional spaces, but when you have a place for people to sit, the reality is litter will increase. So is that the business's responsibility, or is the city gonna maintain that?
Do you have a recommendation?
I think the city should do it. Then my last question is, and concern is, if we lose the gazebo, I have a problem with that, because I use that as a point of reference. So when I tell someone where to go, I say, go to the gazebo and make a left. So I'm going to have to come up with something else. I think that's what it's like. Go to the gazebo.
Remember that we need to try to do one speaker at a time to help out with the interpreters.
Thank you. At the crosswalks, the ones that are mid-block, obviously you're not going to have a crossing signal there, but the ones that are incorporated with an existing traffic signal, are you proposing upgrades to those walk signals? They have the ones that are auditory. White Plains has ones that beep. Atlantic City has ones that actually speak, and they say wait or they say walk. Are you considering any of those types of upgrades?
Yes, the pedestrian signals at these intersections are slated to be improved. The exact type of signal or push button has not been determined yet, but yeah, we're fully aware of those signals that you're talking about and definitely considered.
Those type of signals are best utilized for people who have disabilities and aging, as well as those who are on constant cell phones, walking and looking at their phones. So in all aspects, I think those are the ones that should be targeted. Our son has disabilities. He uses those auditory signals to keep him focused so he can cross streets. So that is a very important factor. I hope that is what you will be going for.
The decision on what material type to use, it's up to the city, but yes, we've designed those, we've used those on several projects of our own, but the city owns the project. As far as what push button they use, that's up to them.
Do we want to all get up and look? And again, we'd love to get your comments on paper. Obviously, I've been writing down everything we've been talking about, and we'll all be walking around, so I don't want to stop the conversation. I just want to maybe allow you to look at things a little more closely, and again, continue talking about it amongst yourselves.
Excuse me, everyone. I just want to say a quick thank you very much for coming tonight. We do have to clear out of the space by 9, so in a little bit I'll start herding cats, but I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, and we're really excited about the project.